Let's bring in the National Secretary of the Australian Workers' Union, Dan Walton, a man who's had a bit to say about gas. Dan Walton, thanks for your time. We've got these AEMO warnings of a gas supply shortage. The government's promised us a mandatory gas code of conduct. Where's that up to?
Well, g'day, Andrew. I think what we've seen today through AEMO is another report highlighting the fact that we need gas long into the future. Not only will we need gas for our domestic purposes, but there's a good opportunity to sell gas to the globe. And despite the rhetoric of some running around in Parliament House saying that we should ban all new coal and gas fields going forward, the effect of doing so would cause huge disruption to Australian residents and also Australian businesses. So what we need to do is find meaningful steps from this point onwards to try and make sure that we bring new gas on, and we do so with the proper parameters to make sure that that gas is offered into the domestic market first at a reasonable price before it's sent overseas to benefit our overseas customers.
Okay, but I'll just bring you back to this question. Do you have any knowledge? I'm not asking a government minister, I'm asking a union leader. I'm conscious of that. Do you have any knowledge where Chris Bowen's up to on this gas code of conduct? They've been promising it for a while now.
Yeah, I think there's a fair amount of consultation which has been going through the works, to be honest, Andrew, because there's some introduction of some other points there. The reasonable pricing mechanism has got the industry sort of up in arms at the moment. Essentially, from my understanding, the government is trying to find a way through to make sure that not only do we have gas coming through, but it's here at a reasonable price. And it picks up the fact that for many, many, many years, the ACCC and others have been calling out the fact that this industry is not operating in any form of ethical way, and that there's a lack of transparency and a power imbalance for negotiating with domestic users. And so that the government had to intervene. We're seeing it now. If they didn't intervene, prices would be even higher. But there's a lot of work to go in the technical detail to make sure that there is a proper mechanism long into the future. I certainly hope that we do get the settings right, that we do see our members continuing to work in the oil and gas industry, that our members in the manufacturing industry still get cheap energy to keep their businesses going. If we find somewhere in the middle where everyone seems a little bit unhappy about it, that's probably the right spot for us.
Well, the opposition would argue the gas price cap long-term leads to supply issues. So what do you say to that?
Well, that is the same former government who did absolutely nothing to approve new gas developments. They did absolutely nothing to make sure that Santos started developing the Narrabri field. They did nothing throughout the journey to put in place any form of energy policy to give any certainty for any resource companies operating in the gas market to make significant investments. We, as the AWU, have been calling for additional development, more fields coming online, because we can see the absolute need to have more gas as we make our transition as a country. But also, Andrew, not losing sight of the fact that our neighbours around us don't have the same access and abundance to landmass to have the huge spread of solar and wind, and that they will need gas to transition away from coal, away from burning oil and diesel and other dirtier fuels, so that we reduce our global carbon footprint. It is a sensible thing, and I think as what has played out in Europe, I know commentators around from the press gallery and through our government are starting to shift their positions a little bit here and say, actually, maybe gas is not a demon. Maybe we do need to recognise the vital role that it plays. And as part of that, we need to make sure that we continue to develop new fields, sign off new leases, and to make sure that we can get gas to domestic users and to supply the world.
All right, well, let me ask you about AUKUS now. Big deal this week, obviously. What are the opportunities out of that? And does this mean the government should look again at nuclear energy?
I think the hard bit about nuclear, to be honest, Andrew, is there's so much investment in technology and in other areas, like going into the likes of hydrogen, advanced offshore wind manufacturing, solar, etc. It's getting harder and harder by the day for nuclear to stack up. And I think, as Bill Gates said when he came over not that long ago, that to be in the nuclear argument going forward, to be a possible country with nuclear, we probably needed to have made meaningful steps a while ago. Again, I hate to point out the fact that the coalition are now absolutely pro-nuclear, but despite numerous inquiries which we participated in, did absolutely nothing to develop a nuclear industry in this country. I still do see a role for nuclear going forward. It does make sense. If hydrogen comes online quicker, nuclear becomes redundant in this country. For a lot of other nations, they are looking to further expand nuclear operations already in place and expand small modular reactors. and good luck to them. I just want to make sure that we've got affordable energy in this country to make sure that we can keep a prosperous manufacturing industry and to hopefully grow it into the future. And with additional dollars coming online, I'm hoping that we can achieve that.
And what do you make of Paul Keating's comments about AUKUS?
Well, to be honest, Andrew, I don't have any kind words to say here. I frankly think it's quite disruptive for the government to have someone sitting in the backbenches sort of throwing hand grenades at whatever topics spur their interest on a daily basis. I think Keating has an enormous legacy and should be incredibly proud of the things that he's achieved, but constantly jumping in to throw a few hand grenades at various governments at this point in time, I don't think helps improve his legacy long into the future. I think there's a lot of people at the moment sort of a bit concerned about his interventions yesterday, and rightly so, not just on the actual factual details about his intervention, but I don't think it helps the Labor Party as a whole, to be honest.
And just finally, we're going to see this report from the Productivity Commission showing productivity has not been lifting. Is IR reform one answer? I suspect you'd say no, and what can the government do to introduce more competition in Australia?
Oh, well, Andrew, I'd probably argue that IR reform is needed, but it's definitely the opposite trajectory of what the Productivity Commission is going to suggest. I think they've got a long, well-worn track record here of essentially finding solutions to try and reduce the power for workers, to try and reduce decent wages and conditions in this country, to try and bring out the old productivity argument once again to say that Australian workers aren't working hard enough and therefore we need to find more flexibilities in the system to be able to maximise the return on each individual output of labour. Frankly, I think Sally McManus rightly pointed out, I think the productivity has served its purpose into the over the journey, and perhaps there's probably more appropriate vehicles that could provide sensible advice to the government going forward.
Dan Walton, thanks for your time this afternoon.
Cheers, Andrew.